Okay, we're starting chapter 3 now, and I'm going to go through a little bit of how function relates back to form. Now what I've done is to separate form from function. Covered form more in chapter 2, and I'm going to cover function in chapter 3. But in the end, they really are interconnected. They're somewhat dependent upon each other. And if you remember from one of the early talks, I had form here. It really is what something is. That's the parts of speech. Traditionally approached as the 8 parts of speech, I really emphasize 6. Function is what it does, and that's really what chapter 3 is going to go into. So function is what that form does within the sentence. What purpose does it serve? Style is the effect of that form and function, those grammatical forms and those grammatical functions, upon the reader. We're going to come back more to style in chapters 4 and 5, but please understand, style isn't really the end, the effect you have upon your reader. It really is your end of why you're writing at this level. Good writers, educated good writers and effective writers, impress upon their readers that they know what they're talking about, and they can be persuasive and move people and inform them effectively. That's a style. And that style is based on form and function. So ultimately what you're after is an effective style. And everybody has a writing style. Everybody has an effect on other folks with their writing. And how do you create an effective style? Is by understanding how form and function work together to create that style. That's what they do. So all of them really in the end are dependent upon each other. I'm going to talk about them separately for a time, but then we're going to see how they all work together. Okay? So I've talked about form, really in the end the parts of speech, and now we're going to move into function. When students get confused, it's often when we move into function and they start tripping up over which one's form and which one's function. And that's a perfectly reasonable problem to run into. Okay? So I'll walk through that with a couple example sentences and just give you some idea as we move, and refer back to this as we move forward with it. Okay? So if we look at this time, these two simple sentences, the dog jumped the fence. So the dog is a noun. I won't go into the words the. Those are articles. Those are essentially adjectives. Most folks don't have any trouble with using them. They already know how to use them. So I don't discuss them much. But dog is a noun, jumped is a verb, and the fence is a noun. Once again, there's an article here, and I won't bother with it. Most folks know how to use those. That's the form of the words within this sentence. Noun, verb, noun. Okay? But what are they doing? They're doing things that are quite different. The dog is functioning as the subject of the sentence. It is a noun, but it functions as the subject. What about jumped? Jumped is a verb, and it functions as a verb. That's what it does. Okay? So it does what it is. It overlaps there. That can create some confusion for folks. You can be one thing and do something different, or you can be one thing and really do that thing too. So verbs can be a form and function together. The fence, right here, is a noun, but what it does is it functions as the object. Objects, whenever they discuss objects, are a function within a sentence. That's what they are. They're an aspect of function. So you can see right now, really in a sentence, there's 2 levels of grammar to understand. What something is, as opposed to what something does. Nouns tend to be either subjects or objects. That's what they tend to be. Verbs are usually verbs in their form and function. Adjectives usually function as adjectives. Adverbs usually function as adverbs. So there's a little bit of overlap, but there's also some important distinctions with ideas of subject, object, and when we get to it, complement with linking verbs. Complement is going to be quite different, but that's going to come up. Okay? Now, here's another fairly simple sentence, but it's going to bring together some of the previous concepts we've had. The brown dog ran across the field. Well, in form, you have an adjective here, and you have a noun here. Brown is an adjective modifying the noun dog, so that's the noun. And you have a verb in ran. Across is a preposition. Okay? The is an article, and the field is a noun. So you have here an adjective, a noun, a verb, a preposition, and a noun. But at another level, you can see this. The brown dog is really working as a single unit. That's a noun phrase. And remember, with noun phrases, they are essentially nouns. That's what they are in the sentence. They are essentially nouns. So this whole thing, the brown dog, is going to operate as a single unit in our brains. That's what it's going to do. Okay? And the same thing's going to happen with across the field. Across is a preposition, the is an article, field is a noun. This is going to function or become a single unit of a prepositional phrase. That's what it's going to become. It's going to become one unit in our minds. And that's how it's going to function in the end. Watch this. The brown dog becomes the complete subject. Grammarians often talk about simple subjects as opposed to complete subjects. The simple subject would be dog, but the complete subject would be the brown dog. Really, in our heads, we use, in our minds, the brown dog as the full subject in our minds. So that's the complete subject. Ran is the verb, and it's going to function as the verb. Across the field is a prepositional phrase, but what is it doing? It's telling us where the dog ran. That's what it's doing. That's what its real function is, of that full prepositional phrase. The prepositional phrase is functioning as an adverb. It's telling us where this is happening. That is something quite unique, and it can be quite confusing for students at first to understand that this whole thing, this type of phrase, can function as an adverb. But understand your sentences are going to be built this way, as a construction of words, phrases, and ultimately even clauses too, built upon each other and embedded within each other. We build these parts, these single parts, within bigger parts, within bigger parts. That's how sentences work. They're not simply words strung together. They're larger units, often of words, phrases, and clauses that are strung together and embedded within each other. So keep that in mind as we go through 3. We're going to get to function, but it's going to relate to form. And we're going to go more with this idea of how clauses and phrases work within the sentences. What do they do and how they create our thoughts, our speech, and ultimately what's most important for this class, our writing. Take care.